we've had 4 films with Mad Max, and I think a lot of fans, including some that have now joined the franchise, were hoping, when are we gonna get another one of these? Like, when are we gonna get another film in this post-apocalyptic wasteland? And yet, it took us almost 9 years to get one. Although spinoff, but still, we'll take it. And the fact that it's a Furiosa spinoff, okay, all right, let's see it.
Do you have it in you to make it epic?
Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, is again directed by George Miller and written by George Miller and Nico Lathouris. Film stars Anya Taylor-Joy, Chris Hemsworth, Tom Burke, and Alyla Browne. According to IMDb's plot synopsis, the origin story of renegade warrior Furiosa before her encounter and team up with Mad Max. The fact that we're getting another Mad Max movie, even though it's a spinoff, is kind of crazy to me because now we are approaching 10 years old with Fury Road, which is insane to think about. I thought we would get one after Fury Road, but here we are. Having seen the film, I really enjoyed this movie. But compared to Fury Road or The Road Warrior, it does fall short a bit within that range. But before talking about the issues, here are some of the positives that I had. The performances are entertaining. Anya Taylor-Joy is fierce and as vengeful as Furiosa, taking over the role that Charlize Theron made so iconic back in 2015. She captures the spirit that Theron brought to the role, but she does make it her own, and she does feel like a young Furiosa. Like, when you watch the movie, you kind of get this feeling that, man, she does feel like she's a young Furiosa. There's not a point in this movie where you felt like this is a completely different character or that this actress cannot live up to the standards of Theron. And while there are parts where she does implement that, I do think that making it her own and making it feel as if that is her role too is, I think, the smartest way to go about this. Another standout in this film is Chris Hemsworth as Dementus, a deranged warlord of the biker horde who abducted Furiosa as a kid. Hemsworth is chewing the entire scenery every time, and he is having the time of his life playing this role. I mean, he was literally let go of all chains or leash or anything to just go full on berserk. In a way, he's almost playing it like a Shakespearean villain, but just Mad Maxified, which is kind of funny to think about, having a Shakespearean villain in a post-apocalyptic wasteland. But Hemsworth, man, he just goes for it, and he doesn't stop, and he's just awesome in it. Tom Burke is loyal and quiet as Praetorian Jack, the commander of the Citadel's first war rig and Furiosa's eventual love interest. Though you can say that he does look a lot like Max in a way of his outfit and his look, his performance was fun to watch. How he explains his story and how he grew up in the wasteland or prior to that is kind of one that you find interesting and one that you kind of want to learn more about, because the way Tom Burke approaches it by being silent and quiet, but also then having a heart-to-heart moment with Furiosa, I think was done well, and I really found myself enjoying the character. And speaking of heart-to-heart moments, both Taylor-Joy and Burke work well together and have great chemistry with one another, and you really do buy their relationship, and you do really feel connected with them because of their chemistry together. Alyla Browne is terrific as young Furiosa. Like Theron, Browne captures an innocent and naive version of the character, but ultimately turns into a vengeful and determined girl, which would be carried by Taylor-Joy later on in the film. And it's kind of interesting that this movie, Alyla Browne is playing Furiosa. I think a good majority of this movie, pretty much almost an hour of this film, is her playing Furiosa before switching to Taylor-Joy, which is kind of interesting because you would think for a character like this, like a younger version of a character, it would just be in the beginning, that's it. No, she's in a good portion of this movie, and she does a really good job of really developing her from being this naive, innocent girl to then becoming the vengeful, determined woman that she is with Taylor-Joy, and then ultimately when we see her in Fury Road. The direction is stellar. Again, director George Miller. This man is nearly 80 years old, and yet he still has a lot of life and energy that he brings into this series. He keeps the insanity and carnage of it all. This man, bless him, because my God, he just truly knows how to keep every movie up with his momentum, how he directs the action, how he captures conversations with characters and their interactions to a very interesting and wacky display that you just kind of fall in love with the movie, or at the very least find yourself really enjoying how much Miller really loves this franchise. The action is fun. Every action sequence feels exciting and intense to watch when it goes down. Definitely some of the most creative sequences in the series. The way the action is handled is so unique and different from Fury Road that I'm glad that it doesn't feel like a copy and paste, because there's a really cool sequence with the war rig where Furiosa helps out and you have all these bandits trying to get at the war rig, and you got one that goes from being on his motorcycle to like a glider in the air with a machine gun, and then you have the war rig that has like a traction in the back that like propels enemies into it to then be killed. It's kind of crazy to think that that's the type of action that you get with George Miller. This really interesting, nuanced way of how creative he can be with some of the kills and action sequences that are in this movie. The music is intense. Composer Tom Hollenberg returns after doing Fury Road's score, which I love, and once again captures Miller's vision so well. Hollenberg keeps up the momentum still. After Fury Road, I feel like that was how Mad Max music should go from here on out, and he still keeps that up. Every time I hear this music, I instantly am like, yep, this is Mad Max. This is truly what Mad Max is supposed to be. And to see that just be let loose and let go, and to still capture the way in which Miller goes about displaying the post-apocalypse and how intense and visceral the film is supposed to be, I think Tom Hollenberg complements it with the score. Cinematography is amazing. Cinematographer Simon Dugan manages to still capture the vision and depravity that Miller's mind just conjures up, making sure the camera is shooting the spectacle of it all. Even though it's not John Seal, who John Seal did an amazing job on Fury Road, here, Simon Dugan, he still keeps that same momentum that John Seal brought, because the way he captures the apocalypse and just how Miller wants it all to look incredible, it's spectacular, it makes you just really be in awe, but also exciting to see all the carnage go down. The production is incredible. Seeing all the hard work and talent being put in front of the camera is amazing. From the cars, costumes, props, and locations, it's all top notch. A lot of hard work went into making sure that this still feels like Mad Max, but in a way that makes you still think that, man, there's no point in this movie where the props don't look right, the costumes don't fit. Like, they all are top notch. The cars look amazing. They really fit the tone of what Miller goes for nowadays. It's just all incredible. The editing is snappy. Like Fury Road, every scene felt sharp and fluid as the film goes on. No matter what, the editing is consistent throughout. I'm so glad that we are now past the point of what Mad Max films editing should look like, and I'm very happy that it still continues to be as sharp and as snappy as it can be, because the earlier movies I had a problem with some of the editing, but here it's now clear that they have found their footing with it. Though a blast, I did notice some issues with the film that I particularly saw, so here are now some of the negatives. The visuals, I think, are too much. Whenever the film utilizes CGI, it's very obvious and it does become a bit distracting, especially since you can notice actors at times standing in front of a green screen. Compared to Fury Road, I feel like Fury Road was, I believe, to be all shot on location and all within camera frame. And it's not to say that there aren't moments in here that aren't in camera, but you can definitely tell that they had to pull back on some of the on-set location to just fit the feeling of it's a blend of both, and it just becomes kind of distracting and it becomes very obvious, and it does kind of pull you out of the film at certain areas. The story, I think, is drawn out. Although interesting, the story doesn't become the revenge film that it's supposed to be, how it's marketed and shown, until near the end. I do wish it could have been a revenge story throughout, and while it does set it up, there's a good majority of this part of the movie where it does kind of go through like the checklist that you see in prequels, like how Furiosa met Immortan Joe, how she became part of his crew, how she lost her arm. You kind of get a sense of it's just kind of going through a checklist of things that you see in prequels of characters or just movies where you're like, okay, it has to hit this, 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 and this, and it just doesn't become super surprising. And I just wish that the revenge aspect was the main focus, instead of it being kind of drawn off to the side a bit to just set up the things that we know Furiosa to be later on. The pacing and runtime is drawn out. The film constantly switches between fast and slow with its pacing as the film continues. The runtime of 2 hours and 28 minutes, I think this could have been cut down. I don't think this movie needed to be 2.5 hours. I think this movie could have been easily under 2 hours or maybe at or even a little, but I don't think it needed to be 2.5 hours because by that point you're kind of starting to like negate the runtime, be as long as it can be, to make it feel like it's an epic film when really it doesn't need to be drawn out. I had a blast with this film. Miller continues to prove he still has energy in him with this series. Hopefully, he can continue to make more films in this series because it clearly shows he has a lot of love, a lot of passion, and dedication to this series, and a lot of creativity when he's making these movies. I really hope he does. So I'm giving Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga, a 7 out of 10. I think it is a fun time. I think it's an enjoyable movie. I do wish it had done well at the box office because it does kind of worry me that it may not have a future. I get why it didn't do unanimously well because it's a niche franchise, but I still think that Miller should be given a chance to still create the movies he wants to make, especially in this series. So, yes, I am going to be giving my review for the Garfield movie, and then the main movies are over. So, yes, look forward to those reviews and other movie TV show reviews coming soon.